Welcome to our business webinar program presented by Bank of America. Today's session is building a tech product as a non-technical founder, and we will learn how to decide if a tech product is even the best solution for your customers, how to find the collaborators who have the right tech background and can understand your vision, and what the tools are that are available to express or test your idea. I'm Desiree Brown, Senior Manager of Digital Education and Content here at the Tory Burch Foundation. And I am so excited to be here with Ahva Sadeghi, who is one of our Tory Burch Fellows. And Ahva is also the CEO and co-founder of Symba, a venture-backed tech company using AI to transform how organizations onboard and empower new hires and emerging talent. So we are in very good hands when it comes to learning how to create that tech product to increase your scale or increase and scale your impact. And so after Ahva's presentation, we will have plenty of time for Q&A. Please be sure to ask your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. Use the chat function for that community building. And we urge you to take notes, but today's session will be recorded, so watch your inboxes for the replay link. And so with that, Ahva, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Desiree, for that warm intro. I really, really appreciate it. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Wonderful. First, would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the entire Tory Burch Foundation team. I went through Tory Burch Fellowship in 2021, and it was absolutely transformational. And I'm deeply honored to be here today, not just as an alum, but as someone who can share the lessons I've learned from my experience. This is a whole session of everything I wish I could have told my younger self as I was getting started. And to be candid, I'm still very much in the arena, still building, still learning. And I believe that's what makes this session today so valuable, because I'm here to share the real tactical lessons. Because really in the beginning, especially for non-technical founders, it can feel overwhelming, daunting, messy, full of unknowns. Where do you get started? So today, my goal is to leave you with more than just inspiration. I want you to have a clear toolkit, something that you can walk away with to cut through the noise, a practical roadmap to get started, and real strategies to bring your ideas to life, even without a technical background. And I also want to say thank you, especially to Desiree, for all your support in making this session possible. I've been a big fan of these webinars, and I think we need more of them in the world of entrepreneurship. So let's dive into our agenda. I'm going to share a little bit more about my story. What is my background? I'm not a technical founder, and I have a lot of experience that was transferable. I'm going to share a little bit of our Simba story, and I want to give you just a general overview of how we went from idea to actual product. And then the part I'm most excited about is the 5-step playbook. And I'm going to pull back the curtains and show you in real time exactly how we apply these steps to build Simba. So I'm going to show you some examples, and trust me, some of the early drafts and slides were far from perfect. It was actually kind of a walk down memory lane, very nostalgic and kind of eye-opening to see how far we've come from the early days. So I hope that gives you confidence that you don't have to be perfect to get started. You just have to start. Then we'll recap everything with a simple checklist so that you can take this with you. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with Q&A. We'll save a good amount of time for Q&A, so feel free to jot down any questions that you have as we go along so it can be interactive. And with that, we'll dive in. I wanted to share a little bit about myself. You might be wondering, who am I? How did I transition into this world? What's my background? And transparently, I would have never imagined I would be here giving this talk on building a tech company as a non-technical founder, because early on in my career, I was deeply passionate about human rights and international relations. I found this passion when I was in high school and traveled to Iran for the first time. I really realized firsthand the differences and the realities of how different systems, political governments can impact our lives. So I went to the University of Arizona, where I studied political science, economics, and philosophy. I interned at places like the Peace Corps and did my graduate studies at LSE. But I want to share something quite pivotal and interesting that happened during my time at the University of Arizona in Tucson. So those of you who know where Tucson is, you might know that Tucson is not the hot spot for exciting internships, especially if you're passionate about international relations. Those internships are in New York or DC, London, really big metropolitan cities. I was fortunate to become one of the first remote interns at State Department based in Washington, DC. And so that's that middle article you see right here, how to intern at State without leaving home. This article I wrote in 2013 went viral. I think it's like the first time they had an article go viral from the Foreign Service Journal. And it was interesting because at the time, remote internships were just not a thing. Internships were traditional. It's about being in person, being in the summer, there in the summer. So they really hadn't innovated. They weren't very flexible. And this experience made me realize how work was changing very early on. And so fast forward a few years, I was fortunate to do a fellowship with late Congressman John Lewis in Atlanta. And during this fellowship, he had every fellow create a social impact project to impact civil and human rights in the US. And I focused on access to the workforce, socioeconomic opportunity, because I truly believe in order to realize any human right, you need to be able to put a roof over your head. So I began thinking, how can we open up access to opportunities, do this at scale? And that's ultimately what we believe in at Symba. It's our mission. And Symba is Simba for symbiotic. So we are empowering both individuals and organizations to grow. Here's a quick synopsis of the Simba story. My co-founder and I met in Washington, D.C. in 2018. So almost 8 years ago. We instantly clicked. Nikita had done 6 internships herself, and she had a background in computer science. So I knew immediately she was the one. And we became very good friends. And as I'll share later, this turned out to be such a crucial part of building a strong co-founder relationship with a technical leader who has the chops to actually build. Our first pilot was with the State Department. In fact, it was actually the team that I had done my remote internship with. When I did the remote internship, there were only 25 interns. At the time we got them to say yes to doing a pilot with us, it was 5,000 interns. And so after we did that pilot and it was really successful, Nikita and I looked at each other and we decided we're all in. Let's go for it. We left our full-time jobs and started really doing everything we can to make Simba a reality. And I will say it wasn't easy. Folks said remote internships will never happen. It's all about being in person. And we pitched, we were fearless. We used our connections, our network. We were asking everybody. And so we had our first kind of big break was getting into Techstars. They gave us some venture capital. They believed in our vision. And then right around that time, a few months later, we signed our first customer. And then we raised venture capital. And then in 2021, we grew really quickly. We hit 1 million ARR. So we accomplished that in less than a year and grew our team, a lot of exciting momentum. And more recently, we've done a lot of exciting product development, launching 2.0, global expansion, as well as some exciting work with AI and partnerships. And here's where Simba is today. I'm not going to dive too much into the actual technicality of what Simba does, but I just want to give you a baseline as we go through today's session. Simba helps large companies, you can see some pretty cool logos here, design their onboarding, engagement workflows. We started off with internships in early careers, and then we expanded our opportunities. And we support things like, for example, alumni offboarding, pre-boarding engagement, apprenticeship programs. So really think cohort models of folks going through a sequence of steps. And we've been very fortunate to be recognized by some really big organizations and receive a lot of great recognition. So excited to share how we got here. So here is the good stuff. So first, in the 5-step playbook, we will help you validate your problem and the need for tech. Tech is expensive, right? It's not a very easy thing to just build immediately. You have to make sure that you are very intentional and very thoughtful and make sure this is actually the right journey for you. Then it's really an important focus to start building out your tech team, communicate your vision without code, test before you build. And I will share some great examples of using AI as a force multiplier for you. So these are the 5 steps, and we'll go ahead and get started. So first step, validating the problem and the need for tech. It's critical to obsess over the problem. I am guilty of it myself as a founder, was so excited to jump into the solution, into the build, but it's critical to take a few steps back and really understand what is the actual need. And so one of the things I'd like for us to all do, and just it's a great framework to get started, is acknowledge that you're starting out with an assumption. We did this in Techstars, and it was actually the first ever workshop that we did once we were accepted into the program. Our managing director, Ryan Kruder, he's incredible. He had us write out on Post-it notes all the assumptions that we had about our problem, and really helped us understand, okay, what about that assumption needs to be true? So questions you can ask yourself in this process is, who does the problem impact? What is their persona? Is it, for us, it was admins from talent programs, HR leaders, as well as interns and early career candidates. You focus on how big is it? Do some market analysis. Understand, is this impacting 1,000 people? Is this, multi-thousand, like multi-million? Is it global? And what's being done today, right? Is there already another solution out there? And when I say this, I really want you to know that if something is already being done, that doesn't mean you can't do it better. That doesn't mean there's a better way forward. So really open up your mind to what could be done, and don't let this process, steer you away that, oh, it's already being done, I can't do it. Validate that the problem is real and significant. 42% of startups fail to know market need. I can see that, this is honestly, it's a big number, but it's really important to understand what the market need is. And so we at Simba gathered insight. We did interviews with over 194 HR professionals at small, medium, and large companies before we ever wrote a single line of code. Obviously, that's a lot and took a lot of time. And given that I, had so many unknowns, I wanted to do my homework. I wanted to do my research. Also, this was like a part that didn't require technical skills. So I really fleshed it all out. And as someone who's done a lot of research and was finishing my master's right before this, I had some insight into doing research and analysis. And so we tallied up insights that we were hearing. And we used this notion of the mom test to ask better questions. I think my mom is tuning into this session today. So shout out to all the moms. I know it's Mother's Day. This mom test is not what you think it might be, because the mom test insinuates that your mom is going to tell you that your project is great, and probably your friends and family. And I've even realized folks that you might be on calls with as well. So it's important to figure out, how are you going to ask questions in a way that really, really digs into what the actual problem is in a very effective way. So some examples of questions that you can ask is, why do you want to do that or achieve that task? And if you had this, what would it empower you to do? How are you managing today without it? If you have a solution to share, you can say, how would that fit into your workflow, your day? Really expand and think through the questions that you're going to ask. Another great strategy that you can explore is create a survey. that you can share with different folks. And you can even make it anonymous. So getting real, candid, raw feedback, and make it easy, right? Don't make these surveys super long. If you're doing focus groups or sessions, make them short, respect people's time, and they're more likely to get involved. We created a full campaign series. And the exciting thing was we were able to go back to those 194 HR professionals and pitch our product and say, we used your insights to build this. So this work is really valuable, not only in understanding the problem, but also in building your pipeline. So make sure you get their emails, make sure you keep them excited on a wait list and engaged in the process. And so if you validated that you do have a problem ready, and now it's the focus is on figuring out, is the answer tech? So here is a framework that we can use. So ask yourself, what is the best way to solve this problem? And so here are a few ways to understand if it's a good fit. Scales quickly across many users. So you've done your homework, you know the market size is really large. You want to automate repetitive or complex workflows that you know can be sequenced. You want to connect people or data or systems, especially things that might be separated, disparate, and located in different geographies. And you maybe want to personalize the experience. Tech is not always the best first step if you are trying to focus on something that's very, very service model based or very manual. To validate, the solution is very niche or low frequency. We don't need a big tech solution to fix a problem that maybe only a handful of folks have, or is not really that urgent of a problem as well. And understand, if high-touch human interaction is essential in your process. So those are some things to keep in mind. I'll share from the Simba perspective 3 reasons why tech was the answer for us. So the first thing was we wanted to scale, right? Our whole vision was to create access to the workforce. So we understood the market size. We studied not only the US market, but also the global market. Second, we did want to automate repetitive and complex workflows that were living in so many different systems. From our research, we learned on average to run a single internship program, it takes a talent leader 9 to 12 platforms, and the vast majority of them are using spreadsheets as their source of truth. So we knew that, okay, there is a way to take this crazy, messy mess into maybe something more streamlined. And then we wanted to connect people, data, and systems. This is actually a screenshot from our very first ever pitch. So there's some logos here that may be like Basecamp and a few others. And I think Skype is no longer going to be around. But you could see we thought of how do we bring this all into one vision here. So step 2, communicate your vision without code. You may think you need code. You may think I must have the most perfect sketch, wireframes to be able to actually start to pitch, to get folks excited about what I'm building. But I'll let you in on a little secret. You don't. There are so many different tactics I'm going to share today that will help you get started that you actually need to do before you're even ready to sketch and visualize everything. So start with the big picture. Really focus on what is the core problem users want to solve. And what is the moment they'll feel like, aha, this worked. Like this problem was resolved. And think of this in a very simple way. I use an example below on mapping out the user flow. So step by step, understanding every step to achieve that goal. A user, for example, wants to sign up for a hair appointment. That's the goal. The user flow would be they sign up, create a profile, book a service, get confirmation. Obviously, super high level, right? There's so many things in between there, right? That we can really focus on, right? Like the scheduling preferences, the time zones, there's so many nitty-gritty details, but focus high level and then you can zoom down. So if you are thinking of building something out, I encourage you today to start off with that. What are the key 2 to 3 main actions, maybe up to 5 max, that your users need to do to accomplish and resolve their problem? And so here's an example of Simba's user flow map. And I went back into our archives to find some of these things. So user flow mapping, we identified for Simba, we have 3 types of personas. So you might have multiple user types. For example, in the hair example, the hair appointment, you might have folks wanting to get their hair cut, and then you might have salons and the actual individuals cutting hair. So you might have a marketplace. Establish who needs to be on the platform, like essentially, and then you can build out the flow for those individuals here. Here is a zoomed in version of an intern map. So we said, okay, week 2, day 1, their internship begins with the supervisor. And then we started to get a little bit more in detail. The intern receives their welcome info from Simba to get started, an email notification with a button link to access the Simba platform. She clicks on the email, goes into a deep linked page. So as you can see here, there's no technical ability needed yet, right? This is all writing the story, telling, being able to vocalize what you want to share. So it's really important that you start here, because you begin to iterate and understand and optimize and improve this whole process and figure out things like that you may have not thought of when you just talk about it out loud. So you can focus on the key point and then break it down here. Here's a little bit more of a beautiful example of the user flow. In this user flow, we used Canva. So Canva is a fantastic tool, super accessible to use. I'm a big fan of it. It's evolved quite a bit actually since I've been using it. Also an amazing woman founder leading the organization. Here you can see we mapped out the whole user experience for the supervisor. They're adding users in. They're welcoming to a launchpad, their community engagement, and then this flows through. So you can create a visual experience as well as a phase 2. Continuing on, I am going to share a little bit about epics and stories. If you haven't heard this term before, totally fine. I had never heard of this before either, but epics are kind of the major goals, the overarching strategy that you want to accomplish. So for example, in our previous one, the epic would be book a service for like the hair appointment. And then you can break this up into very specific examples. So these are the user stories. So as a user, I want to choose a time and confirm my appointment. So this is a great framework, and I'm happy to share this template with other folks afterwards, but pick the goal and then focus on your persona and focus on what they want to achieve, and then focus on the benefit so that I can. And then you can break this down into the different user stories. Again, start small here. Do not focus on every single thing. Really try to do 2, 5 max, and then break down user stories. The epics and stories are actually something that are a technical resource. So this is like getting into that next level technical mindset, because I handed over these epics and stories to Nikita to talk through all of the different examples, the stories, things that needed to be accomplished together as well. Great. Loving all of the comments in the chat so far around epics and stories. There are a multitude of different frameworks, but my encouragement to everyone is really focus on simplicity, and then you can expand. But I know there's almost like 12 different workflows that you, or different frameworks you can use. Atlassian has a lot of great templates and resources. Here is one of our first epics and stories. I get like so like fuzzy inside just looking back at these, because it's so wild to think how far we've come, but this is like the first warm welcome epic, and have fun with it. Like, we didn't just make it like a, very simple title. We warm welcome epic, like really feel that emotion, and then tell the story, like really name your persona. And then, Bridget receives a welcome info email from Simba that provides her with a username and password to Simba so that she can sign in and begin her internship. Like, really paint the picture. Like, then she, Bridget clicks on the login link from her email and is prompted to Simba's login page. Then when she arrives here, she enters username and password as provided in her welcome email to sign into her account. And then once she clicks on it, she can access her Simba account and is prompted to Simba's main landing page. So this is a full epic and story. Ideally, you don't have more than 5 stories. You keep it crisp because that makes your engineering team happy, right? They can accomplish this task and check it off and then move to the next. It's really great for wins. And then also by kind of piecing things together, you're creating building blocks, right? And you're making it easy to move on. I played cello throughout my upbringing, and in music, we were focusing on each measure. And then at the end, we'd focus on piecing it all together because learning the whole piece was overwhelming. So we focus on perfecting every single measure, and sometimes even out of order. And then it all came together. So just a fun tidbit. Continuing on, make it visual. Now you've really fleshed out the details, right? So sketch out the key steps from your user flow and get scrappy. Like, use Post-its. People always talk about napkins. We did use napkins when we were at restaurants. You can use a whiteboard, big Post-it notes. Keep it simple, right? It doesn't have to be beautiful. And like, really just be simple. Draw boxes and arrows. Like, what does the user see first? What happens when they click? What confirmations or messages show success? And then you can level up, right? You can use PowerPoint, Miro, Figma. Also, Canva has some great examples. And so the goal of this step is to now get something raw that you can actually show other folks and get feedback from technical people so they can actually understand what you are talking about. And it makes your whole operation much more scalable because now you can actually hand this over, email this to people, and get a lot more feedback rather than just being the point person who's always pitching. And you'll have a very consistent, pitch that you're sharing, and then you can constantly tweak it. Great. So I'm going to pull back the curtains and show you some of our first sketches. I was on the phone with Nikita this morning, just showing her some of this for the webinar, and we were like laughing and just like couldn't even believe this was our starting point. And some of these, actually, the first version she had never seen before. She was like, "What? I can't believe it was that bad." So the key to that is, ugly is totally fine. You need to be clear. You're aiming for clarity, and worry about beauty, functionality later on, right? So we use PowerPoint because that's what I knew how to do. So this was like our initial registration page. So simple, right? It was like initial actions, create a profile, watch video, key things that they needed. And then we did like a welcome video that you saw. And then here was like their landing page. Yes, this looks this would not be something in this modern era, but you can see all the key tabs, right? So you see the objective of what this page should accomplish. You can see, okay, there's like a message board and updates. I can see open projects, and then I can see, maybe who else is in my organization. And then I can, see an action list potentially. So you start to see like, okay, what do we have in mind here? Oops. And here is an example of like a project page where an intern is completing a project. So pretty straightforward, they're submitting their drafts. Now I'm going to take you into our V2 with Figma. So complete, change. This was like actually a design, I would say. This is a big step. And I remember just like being in love with this screen. I was like, I want to frame this. I was so excited. And here you have like a visual experience. We use a tool called Envision at the time. It's no longer around, and you also don't need it because Figma has a way for you to actually piece together different frames that you've built to actually make it look like a working prototype. And so we do that still to this day. When we're launching a new feature, we present it as if it is built. And given that Simba, we sell directly to enterprise and business, oftentimes the procurement cycle is so long, we can build it by the time, if they say yes. So, we do give ourselves that buffer, but, make people feel it, make it feel real, and then demo it live and get real feedback. And ask folks, is this aligned? Is this what, does this accomplish what you need? And then, push deeper and ask, figure out who's willing to pay. So this is a V3. You can see we kind of updated the icons here. It became a little bit more modern here. And then we made it a little bit more generic, right? Because we wanted something that we could show everybody, not just one company. So make it look and feel like it can be branded. Also, and then here, now we're getting really good, exciting. And Simba looks even better and more exciting than this today, but these are just some initial versions. And happy to share more about our platform. You just have to sign up for a demo and we'll show you what Simba's all about. I did want to share this example. I remember when I was in college, I went with my family to, I believe it was Barcelona, where we saw all the sketches that Picasso made for this painting. And this painting, it was like a whole room of just like all the sketches. And I think there was also another room of like the sketches he had done for like the little princess. And it was just fascinating to see, oh, wow, even the most talented artists, they start somewhere, they sketch. They don't, they don't just jump into their finished copy. I mean, granted, there are some prodigies out there and geniuses, but the reality is when you sketch and you design, you learn things. You can re-envision, improve your strategy, your game plan, and it's a really powerful process. I love it. It's intense, but it's really, really eye-opening. So. And last I'll share is pay attention to how tech products around you are designed. As a non-technical founder, I totally took this for granted. I was like, okay, buttons are here. I was looking at my phone, I was, moving along. And obviously sometimes I was like, oh, that was a very easy checkout process, or like, oh, that was so frustrating. But now I actively think about where buttons are. Why is a button there? Why is it that color? Can we move it? And if I could move it, what would that do for the experience? So study designs you love and you don't, and start to build your taste. This is a muscle that grows with time. And keep in mind, design is something that is, both beautiful, but also functional, right? It should really show the story, the impact as well. Share this with your users, as I mentioned, figure out who will pay, get 2 more like them, invite them to your journey. These can be your design partners, your biggest champions. Really build with them, not for them. One of our biggest champions, we went to her with all of the sketches of Simba, and we met her through LinkedIn. She's a champion in our early career internship space. She's now an angel investor and a big champion, and she's built the whole platform alongside with us, giving us great feedback as we did. So it was really exciting to share that. Step 3, building your tech team. Now that you know what you want to build to some degree, right? Things will change. Now you need tech capacity. So you need to start finding people with the technical skills to bring your ideas to life. And as I was prepping for this webinar, I had a conversation with Desiree. We went back and forth, and I was like, well, I know I'm not a technical founder, but now throughout the past 8 years, I'm pretty technical. But there's so many important parts of the startup journey that check your ego. Even though I do have a lot more technical skills, I'm not the technical founder, and it's important to understand what I can bring to the table and what we need to bring from outside or, nurture to our pipeline, our team. So really mine your network, ask yourself, who do you know that has technical skills? Being in the space, I thought everyone was somewhat, involved. It was a higher volume, and I'm based in the Bay Area. Only about 7.5% of the US workforce is technical. So make sure you share your mission everywhere, loud and proud, talk about it, post about it on socials, ask your community to help you make connections, and then tap into networks, communities like meetups, conferences, Twitter, Slack groups, YC matching on deck. There's a whole myriad of them. And I met my co-founder at a Women in Tech event in DC, as I mentioned. I was actually wearing this blazer that I'm wearing right now. It's now my lucky blazer because she complimented this blazer, and that's actually what kicked off our conversation, and we became good friends. So use these connections and ask for guidance on what it takes to actually build your product. And I had a lot of success reaching out to professors and tech bootcamp instructors. The tech bootcamp instructors wanted me to become a customer, obviously, but they were really supportive and open in my mind, offering different insight into boot camps and different resources I could find that were free, even LinkedIn Learning and Coursera. And then I was able to figure out how to actively and get them involved. For Nikita, before she decided to fully come on board, she was basically volunteering as like an advisor for 3 to 5 hours a week because we didn't have any capital, right? We were very young getting started. So we talked about equity, and we also, talked about maybe part-time opportunities. And so keep in mind, if you do offer equity, equity usually has a cliff. So don't worry that, okay, this is now my technical co-founder, and if like it doesn't go well, you have so many things baked in to protect you. But keep in mind, don't stress about equity too much, because one of my advisors mentioned to me and gave me great advice. It's not about having a big piece of, a small pie. It's about having a sliver of a really, really successful pie and company. So really think about that. And if you're building something big, it should be much bigger than any one person or any one team. Hopefully this is something everlasting. And so your tech team is everything. Trust and communication are essential. And I say that because without a technical background, when Nikita tells me that these are the 3 paths forward, or this is the timeline, I have to trust her, because I don't have necessarily the skill set or the bandwidth or the understanding, the wherewithal, especially on the early days, to understand how to scope this out. Now I've learned a lot in the process, but you need someone that you can trust, because the GitHub, the source code, everything, that's just critical. It's the brain, the spine, the foundation. Your tech is so, so important. So, figure out an effective way to vet your tech partners. We worked with an expert advisor who is ready to do interviews for us. And then also figure out ways to think outside the box. One of my mentors has said to me, do an activity with Nikita that's not work related. And actually the first activity he did was cook dinner together. And that was kind of building out a relationship and finding commonalities and improving communication. We also love fitness. When we lived in SF together, we would run up the hills and be like, Simba's at the top, and race with it with all our might. So we're really finding ways to, get outside of work and improve your communication, because you need to have each other's back. And you need to know that person has your back, because that's essential into making this all happen. And you don't necessarily need to have a technical co-founder. You can also work with a product designer. You can hire on engineers, and you can work with a dev shop. So there are a lot of other ways besides bringing on a technical co-founder that I want to add. Now, test before you build. I cannot stress this enough. Just like within companies that buy inventory, right? You want to make sure that you are buying the right amount of inventory, so your apartment isn't filled up with things that are never going to be sold, right? And that's just the same thing within technology. You want to make sure you're not going to have tech debt. You're not going to spend all this money and no one's going to buy. So there are a few ways to do this that are pretty user-friendly and that you can set up quickly. So there are ways to prototype your idea using no-code tools. So Webflow, Notion, Bubble, you can piece these together. And as I mentioned, the example of Figma, you can design them so they look like they're actually real. Kind of think about it as like a sample, right? If there's a sample cell, there's like one jacket before we like build out the whole model. Think about it that way. You know, I'm doing a lot of fashion given this is Tory Burch, right? And then kind of fake it first before building it for real. And I say this because when we have a user who says, I need this to be set up this way, we take a step back with them and we ask them, what are you trying to actually accomplish? And then we hack together a very simple way of validating that they'll actually do what they say that they want. So for example, for Simba, we had a lot of interest in building out surveys and evaluations, and it's a big build. So before doing that, we decided to use Typeform to automate the whole process and figured out to see, are people actually using it? What is the volume of usage? And then how are they using it? Because what this does is not only does it help us understand if they're using it, but two, understands the nuances of how this should be built, right? What about Typeform or Google Form or SurveyMonkey isn't going to work for the customer? And what are the limitations so that we can think ahead and be strategic about how we build this out? I learned that Stitch Fix used Google Form and Excel before building tech. So get scrappy. Like, we are crazy scrappy at Simba. We have stickers that we put on things rather than paying for expensive branding. We, really think outside the box of like, how can we accomplish our objective in the path of least resistance, right? Because that's your goal there. And then set a goal for your pipeline and timeline to launch. Do everything you can to really understand the demand. Pre-sale, collecting signups, just like you can have a wait list on your website that people can fill out. Anyone you interviewed, they can be a part of the journey. It was really cool to see that Dropbox got 75K waitlist signups from a video they did. So you can use a lot of socials to build hype before your product's even created, right? Get people excited. There's so much that you can do before the product is created. And I hope everyone leaves with that insight, because I know when I started, I thought I have to have the product before I can do anything. But we really did a lot of work for almost 9 months to a year leading up to building the product. And then if you don't hit your goal within your time frame, figure out what happened, assess, and then decide, maybe this isn't what we need to build. Scratch it off the feature list, right? Make sure that you are actually listening and you are making changes. Avoid confirmation bias here and really be critical, because anytime you build something, it takes development resources, but also means that you're not developing something else. So there's always trade-offs. And last, but definitely not least, obviously, we have to talk about AI in 2025, but use AI and tech to move faster. So there are a myriad of resources in today's world that you can use, tools that I would have done a lot to have back then. So use AI to do the heavy lifting. You can use AI to research competitors, what's being done in the space, analyze market trends, summarize insights from different research papers and blogs. There are a lot of tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Cloud. I use almost all of them for different things, and we'll pin them against each other to get different insights. So really try to reduce your burden. I think what I would have loved to use AI for is market analysis and just understanding my addressable market so that I can take that to investors and have something built. You can also use really great tools to visualize everything we mentioned. And then also you have the option to plug in third-party tools instead of building from scratch. So this goes without saying, there are a lot of things to be cautious about when you think about third-party tools. And whenever we build something at Simba, we always assess, is there something else out there that we can plug into Simba? And if there is, we do our due diligence. What is the cost of us building it versus implementing this solution, and how effective is this new solution, right? How much, what is the customer experience? How developed are they, right? If it's a new startup that's built the solution, we're not going to plug them into Simba, because anytime they do an update, our platform could be impacted, right? So it's really important to think through the trade-offs. Some great examples of third-party tools that people use are like email builders, chatbots in the platform. You can do a lot of great things for like user uploads. So like, and also a lot of great work on data visualization. So you are building out your own BI data visualization tool, and that's not what you're selling, let's talk, right? There's so many great things, and talk with other founders, right? Always ask, am I going about this the right way? What things should I be asking myself in this process? So this is, as you can see, super collaborative. You should not go at this alone, and you should really tap into your community through every single step in this journey. And so today I'm excited to leave you with this checklist. Desiree is going to share it with everyone at the end of our session today. But here's a checklist that kind of recaps. Really, one, focus on the tech discovery, right? What is the problem? Do I need tech? Two, sketch the vision, tell the story. Do not obsess over beauty. Focus on clarity. Start big picture and then break it down. And know this is a process, right? Just like Picasso, you'll go through many iterations. Build your tech team. You need tech capacity, right? You need the right folks who can help you turn this idea into real life. So find out where they live, get them excited, get them involved, and think about flexible arrangements like advisor opportunities. Test. Please test as much as you possibly can, so that you know that what you're investing your resources and building is going to yield results. So scope it out, time box it, validate it. And last but definitely not least, obviously, use AI, use the modern tools that you have at your fingertips to do research, do the heavy lifting, visualize things, and consider third-party resources. You're not at this alone. You have an amazing community with Tory Burch Foundation, and I'm excited to connect with you all as well. And we're going to go from here into our question and answer section. And I'll just share this slide so you can all connect with Simba and me afterwards. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Ahva. We have learned so much on with you today. So I want to start with how can non-technical founders even know where to begin when looking for a collaborator? Do they need a developer, a programmer, a software engineer, or someone completely different that I didn't even know to name?
Great question. And that was my question, because I was like, okay, this is the visualization, but like, what does this even mean? What is the recipe, right? I know I want this cake. What I did was I tapped into and reached out to advisors. And I actually just used LinkedIn to find one of my very close advisors and mentors. And I began to scope this out with their expert support. And so I mentioned also there are boot camp instructors as well as professors. So do reach out to folks, and like really reach out. Don't like send one LinkedIn message. I'm talking like send 100 messages to maybe get 1 or 2 responses, right? We have a lot of social media outreach that's happening. You can also go to panels and sessions and walk up and meet the person during the Q&A session and just ask them, be like, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time? What do you think I need here? And then don't just use their feedback. Also get feedback from a few other folks. So these are all the lessons I learned. Make sure that you ask other folks. You really need to be curious in this process. So hopefully that gives you some answer of how to get started with that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I love the idea of, again, using your network or building out the network to help with creating that product. Let's see. We had quite a few people on today who are asking, as you're doing these tests, meeting with lots of people who you think could be end users. How can you protect your intellectual property, your IP?
I am so glad this came up because I realized as I was reviewing, I was like, this is something that was so important to me. I was like obsessed over like people not stealing this idea. And my close advisor, my technical advisor said, Ahva, don't worry about that. And if you're so worried about that, then I think you need to think through what your technical and competitive moat is if it's that easy when someone sees it just to build, right? So the key here is you should be open to sharing. And if you are doing something that is very, nuanced that you can actually patent, then you can have NDAs in place and you can have a very simple NDA that's a one pager that folks can sign that you can send to them. But my advice would be, and if I were to tell my younger Ahva, don't stress about that. Because many of these tech companies literally have exactly their platform on their website or their YouTube videos. You can demo the whole thing. It takes a lot to build. So folks aren't going to just capture that, right? It's the ideas are a dime a dozen, but it's all about the execution, the marketing, the go-to-market strategy, all of that will be your competitive moat.
And I love what you had to say there. And I'm sorry, I'm just looking through for our next question.
Okay.
We have a lot of them coming in, a lot of curiosity. Okay. How would you, or how did you decide between white labeling a basic solution versus building an MVP for something that was completely different?
So I think that it depends on the goal of what you're trying to build, right? So if I were to think about an MVP version one, or like a white label version one, through my research, I would try to identify, right, how is this being done today, or is there a solution out there? And if there's actually a solution out there that could be white labeled, you better bet that would be my first like place I would go to. Like there's no way I would like build a brand new home from scratch if I knew there was something there. And there's opportunities to migrate, right? Like you can start there, figure out what works, and then you can migrate. But ultimately, this is such a nuanced question, depending on what you're actually building, right? Because if it is about the actual technology that is driving the outcome, or if you're building a community around and you're using a platform to build community, there are so many great solutions. You should not be building a brand new community engagement platform. Like that's also something we can talk about. But if the goal of what you're building is very nuanced, right? Like a brand new type of CRM or recruiting solution that has never been done, then it will be very difficult to find something that's off the shelf. So that's about doing the research and asking, AI about if there is something out there.
That's wonderful. And actually, speaking of AI, an issue that's come to the forefront is the fact that there is bias built into those systems. And so can you say a little bit about how you build intention into inclusive design approaches with your work?
Absolutely. So by nature, Simba, given that our whole vision was about creating access to the workforce and our mission, our team at Simba is very diverse, right? Folks ask, oh, how do you have, a women-founded company and so diverse? I'm like, well, because, usually your founding team reflects what you look like. And so we have everybody involved in the process, and something that Nikita instilled very early on in our company, because at first we didn't have like a QA engineer. This was very early on. We did bug bashes. And so I think you can also do this with AI. You can assess things that come out and have different folks from the team, identify and really be very cautious about flagging something and treat it like a cybersecurity threat. Like really like report about it and document why this was biased. So now your team has a toolkit to identify things that the AI tends to be biased for, specifically for what your company is building and focused on, so that you can start to optimize and improve it. Because AI has bias, but we also have bias. right? So it's important that we do everything to check ourselves as well as checking our systems that we're using.
I love that. I love both getting the whole team involved and then thinking about how it shows up in the real world. Um, okay, so going back a little bit to the question of partnership, um, as someone who is not a developer, how did you know, or were you able to assess, um, other than getting multiple points of view, how whether or not the technical lead you were interviewing or were considering would be the person to execute your ideas?
So, do you mind us elaborating? Because you're saying other than the process that we did, like the advice, because we had an advisor support kind of and guide that process.
Okay, so I think, I mean, that's halfway to the answer. So the question
Oh
is,
yeah.
you as the founder, who is the non-technical founder, how did you assess whether or not the person that you were the technical person you were bringing on would be the one to execute your ideas? And I know that you spoke a lot about asking multiple people, getting multiple points of views, but I just wanted to know how else might someone be able to assess that for themselves?
Absolutely. And that's a process that will be everlasting. It's just like essentially very critical at the first few that you bring on. But anytime you hire on engineers or product leaders, oftentimes at Simba, we do take homes, projects and things that can actually test out their skill sets. Right. So there's ways that you can design part of this process to ask them to build something, ask them to create something, and time box it for them. You can even do it for like product leaders and PMs. We'll do it like in real time, where we'll ask them during the meeting and do like a 1 hour session together to see how does their brain think. Are they able to answer in the way that we think would be valuable to what we are building? And it's so important as a founder to check your ego, because I know at the beginning you're like, my idea, so excited. It should be so much bigger than you. And so it's not about finding the technical lead to build your idea, right? It's about finding a technical lead who believes in this idea for the community and the user base that you're serving.
Mm. That is a really great distinction to make. And so we do have just a minute here. So if there's one thing that you want people who are attending today to take away, what would that be?
I would really want folks to know, I would say two things. You don't need a technical background to get started. And there's so much that you can do before you build the product. And the second thing is, please effectively test what you're building so that you build something that creates value and sustains your business effectively. So really, really, really focus on testing and making sure you're proving out a market need.
That is such a great place to end. Thank you, Ahva. This was wonderful. We really appreciate you joining us and sharing your expertise and your journey with building Simba.